Warning: some contents may be disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. This actually didn't happen to me. It is a story that happened to my aunt back when she was in her mid-20s, and I'm going to say that it's an incredibly intense story. And this should definitely serve as a type of trigger warning. And like I said, she was in her mid-20s, and this happened back in the late 80s, a few years after I was born. Unfortunately, all of this had been told to me as I was just a baby when it happened, so I may miss some of the details, but I don't think it diminishes the overall story. This story happened while they were still married, but he is her ex-husband now, so I think it counts. My aunt and uncle met back when they were in high school, and they became a couple back when they were about 18. From there, they got married at the age of 22, and then were trying to have a kid, but come to find out, my uncle was sterile and they couldn't have kids. From what I've been told, this caused some problems between them, and they were on the edge of divorce, but they decided to go into counseling to try and fix it. From there, they supposedly got to a point where they were okay and things were essentially repaired. This was apparently not true at all. They were actually in a worse situation than before. Apparently, when they went to counseling, my aunt's husband started down the path of becoming super religious. And while there's nothing inherently wrong with being religious, he took it to a whole other level. He apparently became super controlling over my aunt and started making her go to church with him and start cutting the family out of her life. It hit the point where she told us that they were doing great together and that we didn't need to worry about her. But on the other side of that fence, he was abusive, controlling, and just genuinely doing whatever he could to ruin her life and make her miserable. She said that it started with him telling her that she needed to repent and beg forgiveness from Jesus. She said that she was okay with this and saw that maybe devotion to a higher power would be enough to keep them together. She started going to his church. She started praying nightly with him, and they started doing nightly Bible reads. Slowly, the controlling behavior started digging in. He started telling her what she could and could not eat. He started telling her that she wasn't allowed to leave without his permission. And after a while, he started controlling the music that she could listen to and what TV shows she could watch. Basically, anything that was violent, sexual, or had inappropriate language was banned from their house. Her husband literally hit a point where he was treating her like a child and running every single minute of her life. This would be bad enough, but things actually started getting worse with him. After he was at a point where controlling her wasn't enough, he started physically abusing her when she got out of line. All the while, he would be citing biblical scripture to her about things that were barely relevant. The big thing that happened between them actually happened about a year into all of this. My aunt had managed to get away from him for a little while. I had no idea how and spoke with a lawyer. She was able to get the paperwork started for them to get a divorce, and she brought it to him and told him that she wanted out of the relationship. While I commend her for being bold and standing up to him in this situation, it's not something that typically goes well with dealing with an abuser, and this did not go well. As soon as my aunt started talking about divorce, he started screaming at her about the sanctity of marriage and yelling about how her asking for a divorce was a literal slap in the face of Jesus. She told him that his abusive behavior was the exact opposite of what a true follower of his religion would have been doing. And then he went berserk. He went off on her, asking her how she could dare call him a blasphemer. And at that point he snapped. He started saying something about how she was possessed by Satan. He started telling her that the devil was using her to attack him, and that her inability to have a child, even though it was him that was sterile, was proof that she was nothing more than a puppet for the demons. He then grabbed a knife and then told her that he had no choice but to kill her in order to prove his love to Jesus. That night, that man stabbed my aunt 7 times. He used the kitchen knife and stabbed her over and over until he was sure that she was dead. Then he left her to bleed out. And fortunately, my aunt was way more of a fighter than he anticipated, and she had managed to actually survive the attack. She managed to knock the phone off the base that was in the kitchen, and she dialed 911, and by some modern medical miracle, she made it through. As for him, the cops actually arrested him in a church, apparently after he attempted to murder his wife with multiple stab wounds, and thinking that he had succeeded, he drove to the church that they attended, covered in blood, and asked the priest to say a prayer for him. Instead of sitting and praying with him, he called the cops. It's almost ironic that he tried to kill my aunt because Jesus wanted him to, and she survived. Then he went to a church, only for the religious figurehead to betray him and turn him into the police. It almost like attempted murder for your spouse isn't something that Jesus or really any deity would want you to do. And that's an absolutely crazy way to think. My aunt fully recovered. She does have some gnarly scars on her stomach and chest now. But I'm just grateful that she made it, and that this guy is in prison for the rest of his life. Maybe someone out there really was watching the situation and made sure that it went the way that it actually was supposed to. As a child, I was raised in a small tight-knit town. I hated it. Everyone knew you, and there was no such thing as a secret. If you tell one person, you will hear it from someone else in 2 days tops. I had a group of 4 or 5 friends max that I might share things with that I could actually trust. Hell, some things I couldn't even tell my little sister without getting something on her. Otherwise, we just use it as leverage on each other. And that's what makes the situation even crazier to me. Our school classes were pretty normal, in curriculum and in size in my opinion. We had maybe 10 or 15 of us in a classroom. No one outside of our town was interested in going to our school, and as soon as they were given the opportunity, kids in high school that had cars would get to choose to go to school outside of our district to get out of here, or people would move out before then. I was not so lucky. My family was far from wealthy, so we stayed in our town till I was old enough to move out. Anyways, back to the classes. Obviously, being a teenager, relationships are bound to happen. There weren't many to choose from, and some may have even been a year younger or older than you. I dated a few different girls there, but there was one I was with for about 2 years. For privacy reasons, I'll call her Macy. From the outside, Macy was a fun girl to be around. She was tall, about shoulder-length dark hair, and dark brown eyes with freckles. She could talk to anyone. She was definitely outgoing, and I never really saw a mean side to her. I think she would strive to be everyone's friend. She was just part of our group of friends for the longest time. She wore makeup and dressed more feminine, but also loved going down by the river with me and my friends to catch things, destroy things, and maybe enjoy some drinking. It was over the summer that I really got to know her more. I knew her dad was a drunk and her mom worked a lot, so she didn't see them much. She came over to our house a lot for dinner and sometimes even slept in our living room. There was one time that she had gotten into an argument with her father. He had grabbed her and started choking her when her mother finally convinced him to let her go, but her mother told her that it was best for her to leave for a while. She came over in tears and I helped her calm down, and I think that really solidified our relationship in a weird way. I was angry. My parents weren't perfect, but they would never hurt us kids. How could a parent do that to their own kid? It was worse when the cops showed up and did absolutely nothing. They showed up to their house, took him in. He said he was sorry and was able to come home after sobering up. Like that changed anything though. She practically lived with us at times. She slept on the couch. Sometimes she'd fall asleep in my room and I'd sleep in the living room. We acted like a normal couple for the most part, hanging out with friends together, always walking to class together, things like that. But after a while, I started seeing a different side of her. I noticed some of the smallest things would set her off. If a friend teased her about something, like throwing a ball weird, and I didn't immediately defend her, she would be pissed. It started as her just ignoring me for the rest of the night. Then she would complain to me in private about how she was embarrassed. But then it started to become more public. She would call me out in front of our friends and even my parents and then storm off. This was my first real relationship, so I didn't really know how to react to it. I would go through the motions, apologize and make up, and we'd be fine. However, it always seemed to get worse. The more serious fights would happen when it was just us. She'd kick things, punch things, scream if she could, and sometimes she would even hit me. It was actually just punching me in the chest or smacking me in the face, but it was still unusual. I thought surely it had to do with her father being the person he was. Maybe this was what she did because she was used to it. So I would do what I could to calm her down, but it stopped working after a while. I would have to lock her out of my room or I would leave until she calmed down, but of course, that's when the accusations would fly. She would start getting loud and push me while at school, and it was embarrassing for me at that point, so I would just walk away. For some reason, when I did this, she thought that I was trying to hide from my other girlfriend. She started accusing me of cheating on her, and she'd always show up at the door of my classroom and wait to see if I walked out with another girl. We had a group project in one of my classes, and I was paired with my friend, Jeff, and some girl that I didn't know too well. And when I was leaving the room, she punched me in the face and started saying that she finally caught me. I remember the girl just looking horrified as she tried leaving without Macy noticing her. People were starting to gather, but she had her eyes locked on and jumped on the girl's back and started slamming her around. I managed to get her off of the girl and told her that we were done. I remember that I called her psycho or something equally hurtful because the look in her eyes changed to sorrow, and she ran off. I, of course, got called to the office and had to explain what happened. Macy ended up being expelled, and I told them it was my fault, hoping that the other girl didn't get any trouble. And I ended up being suspended for the quarter. I finished my suspension, and as awkward as it was, I returned to school to be the center of discussion for everyone. I didn't get to hear much on what happened to Macy, except for what my friends knew, which wasn't much, until I returned. I heard her parents were forced to put her in therapy, and possibly some kind of school for troubled teens, but I never saw her again. That happened about 18 years ago. Right after high school, I left that town. I wanted to go somewhere that was a lot more alive and meet people that I hadn't known my whole life. My sister and I even inspired our parents to get out of there a few years ago. However, they still surprise me with the amount of information, news, and gossip they tell me about people that live there. That's where it gets crazy. Around the time of our 10-year high school reunion, people started trying to contact me about getting together. I thought, why the hell not? And I decided to start making plans to visit. However, a few weeks after that, I got a frantic call from my mother late at night telling me that there had been a fire in our old town. She told me it was Macy's house, and the terrifying part, her parents died in the fire. My father was good friends with one of the cops there, and he had told them that Macy was still living there on and off, but she was working the night it happened, and they had to go pick her up. After the investigation, they had determined that her dad had passed out with a cigarette. He was blitzed, of course, and her mom had actually taken sleeping pills. It was just a bad situation, and I felt sorry for her. I almost wanted to reach out to her, maybe to at least give my condolences, but something told me not to. My mother went to the services, and she said Macy was just a shell. She just sat in the front pew staring straight ahead until the services ended. Afterwards, she said she was nowhere to be found, so my mother left her card with the other items and left. After that, I never heard about Macy or her life until last year. This time, my friend actually texted me and sent me a link to a local news for our old town. It started as a suspicious fire. Police were called to an old barn that was on fire behind one of the bars. Someone apparently walked out back, smelled the smoke, saw the flames between the trees that separated the property, and then called 911. After they put out the fire, they found a man's body in there. He had been stabbed multiple times, bludgeoned with a shovel, and doused in some kind of oil and set on fire. They couldn't ID the guy because he didn't have anything on him. That was crazy enough, right? Not at all. Not for that place. Rumors started flying pretty quickly. People started talking, but not to the police, but that didn't stop them from finding out. That's when my friend started filling in the blanks where the story left off. He still lives there. He actually took over his parents' drugstore, so he gets just as much information. The guy ended up being identified as the owner of the bar. They figured this out because his wallet was found in the dumpster at his bar, but his cash was missing. Coincidentally, someone showed up at a different bar, flaunting cash and buying everyone drinks, saying it was in this guy's honor. Thing is, they hadn't publicly announced this guy's identity, so the police took notice of this. The girl was picked up and questioned when she finally confessed to the murder. And you know where this is going. It was Macy. She was apparently dating the owner, or at least there was something going on between them. However, he was married. Rumors are that the wife found out and the owner tried to break it off with Macy, and she wasn't having it. And now that she is locked up for this, the rumors are coming back that she may have been involved in her parents' death. So, not only did I date a not-so-stable girl in high school, but she turned out to be a murderer. So I guess I got lucky at that time. But it does make me think what could have happened if I did reach out to her when her parents passed. What if we didn't move? Could I have been a victim? I also think if this was related to her childhood, and if that could have made a difference as well. One thing I told my friend though, is that he'll have to come to see me from now on, because I do not want to step back in that place. This story happened to me back when I was in college. I would have been around 21, I believe, which means that it would have been around 2010. And back then, I used to be a bit socially awkward. Okay, really socially awkward. And I lived on campus for most of my college career. Because I've always been a bit of a loner and a bit of awkward, I've never really been one to make a lot of friends. And until that point, I've only ever had one boyfriend in high school, and we just kind of decided to go our separate ways after dating for half a year. And when I say dating, I mean basically just talking in the hallways a lot. So yeah, you could say that I was a bit inexperienced when it came to boyfriends and relationships in general. Well, due to this lack of experience, I was a bit desperate, and the minute that a guy showed any interest in me, I kind of fell into it. In late 2009, around the end of August, when the fall semester started, I met a guy named Jack. And no, before anyone thinks it is, it's not his real name. Anyways, Jack was a bit of a quiet guy and seems like he didn't have many people that he would call friends. Basically, the exact kind of person that I was. Because of this, and because of a lab that we had to do with a partner, I ended up sitting by and subsequently getting to know Jack. I think the instructor saw that we were both loners and wanted to try and play matchmaker, which I really wish she hadn't. Jack and I became pretty good friends over the couple months that we worked together in that class, and there was some obvious chemistry between us. Then, on my birthday in January, he took me out to dinner and told me that he really had a crush on me and that he was wanting to ask me out. Long story short, we started dating. Of course, and again, I was inexperienced in the world of dating, and it pretty much felt the same to me, except we talked on the phone more and about deeper things. The relationship was going pretty well, honestly. We had our class together, we worked on various projects together, we studied for our exams, and while we were dating, I honestly was looking at Jack more of a best friend than a boyfriend. Obviously, I know now that it was likely that I didn't actually have feelings for him. But back then, I just kind of thought that this was what being in a relationship was for people in college. I mean, sure, others would go to parties, go drinking, clubbing or whatever, but that just wasn't who we were. We were the loner nerds, and I think I really just enjoyed having a fellow loner to talk to and spend time with. He treated me fine for the most part, and we rarely got into arguments, and I was happy. Obviously, this wouldn't be a story about a crazy ex if things didn't start to go sour, and they did start to go sour. We got together in January of 2010, and I think this all started around Valentine's Day. In fact, it was Valentine's Day that started to set this whole thing into motion. Something to note about me, I am a bit of a prude. I do not like my body, and I didn't like my body then, and I've just never really been into things that people think are sexy. This seemed like it wasn't that big of a deal to Jack, and we had never really even discussed sex in any way. Then, come Valentine's Day, I remember that he and I went out on a date, and it ended with us sitting in his car in the dorm parking lot. We were talking about how much we enjoyed dinner, how classes were going, and I think I was telling him about issues that my parents were having back home. And he handed me a box. My initial thought was chocolates, the stereotypical Valentine's gift. However, no, this was not chocolate. I opened it, and inside the box was a gently folded up nightgown that was mostly see-through. It was very clearly intended to be worn during, intimate moments. I recall that my face became beet red. I didn't expect this, and I didn't want it, and I really wasn't interested in what was being implied by him giving it to me. What's worse, despite my embarrassment and my clear look of mental anguish, Jack followed up with, "I have a bit of extra cash this month. How about you and I go to a hotel room tonight and see if you can try that on?" I think I honestly started to cry. Like, not tears of joy or sadness, just literal eyes watering from some strong level of embarrassment and disdain. I folded it back and placed it back in the box, then handed it to him. I told him that, as much as I really like him, and as much as I appreciate the thought, I was not ready for this relationship to go to the next level. I remember apologizing over and over again and just telling him that I was not ready. And after a few moments and heavy sighs, he turned to me and handed the box back. I was a bit upset, but he comforted me with, "Look, I'm not trying to pressure you. I really do love you and I want to be with you for the foreseeable future. So, what I want you to do, I want you to keep this, and then, when the day comes that you're ready, it'll be there. That way, I don't have to go through the awkward process of returning it, and we can still call it a gift. Is that okay?" And, of course, I accepted this proposal. I would keep it and then it would be there when I was ready. I told him that I didn't know when that would be, and he seemed genuinely okay with it. Everything about his statement, his behavior, and his attitude, all of it seemed genuine and I believed him. This was, unfortunately, where our relationship started to fall apart. We would spend time together and he would be super clingy, and then, by the end of the night, he would seem like he was super distant, like the night was great until it was over. Then, he would be upset. In hindsight, makes it super obvious why, but back then, it was just odd behavior for me. Anytime we would watch a movie that involved anything sexual, he would always get, well, let's just say, weird. Then, when nothing sexual happened between us, the next day he would be super pissed. I would ask him what was wrong, and he would always go off on me over literally nothing. He once yelled at me that I was awake too late after we had spent time together, because I posted a meme on Facebook about half an hour after he'd left. He seriously exploded because I shared a stupid meme after he'd left and told me that if he wasn't there at night, he wanted me in bed and asleep. That was actually one of the worst fights and where the already crumbling relationship seriously took a turn. After that night, when he would come over and be together, he would be super controlling, asking me where I was going every time I got up, asking who I was texting and who was texting me, and asking what I had done that day and scrutinizing every single thing that I said. Then, after he would leave, he would wait about 20 minutes and he would call me. I made the mistake of answering a couple times, and the times I answered, he actually yelled at me asking why the hell I was still awake. He would text me randomly throughout the day and ask me, more like demand, that I take a picture of myself and whatever was in front of me. So, to put it simply, he became ridiculously controlling and wanted to know every single detail about everything that I was doing. Again, this was my first relationship with an adult, the first time I had a boyfriend that I actually spent time with, and I had no idea what the hell I was doing or supposed to do. Then I actually had an event that gave me a bit of clarity. I was talking with my mother one day, literally talking to her about her going through a divorce with my father, and he texts me with a, "Hey, I want a pic of you." I think my tone changed and my mom noticed because she asked me what was wrong, and I broke down. Within a few seconds, I went from trying to comfort her to bawling my eyes out and telling her all about Jack and how he was ruining everything. I seriously just let it all come out. She straight out told me to dump him. She told me that she was unhappy in her marriage with my dad and that's why they were getting a divorce, and that she didn't want me to end up with someone that I didn't love or end up unhappy. At that point, it just kind of clicked. I had to break up with him for my sake, and I didn't want to end up in a loveless relationship with a man that controlled my every move. The next day when he came over, I told him that we needed to split up. He was, of course, furious. He started in with anger, then he started threatening to hurt himself, and then he started calling me every single awful word that he could think of. Obviously this hurt, but I let him finish it up, and then explained to him that I needed some time alone because of my parents getting a divorce and that the stress of my family breaking up was getting to me. Yes, this was a lie, but it was the best that I had. After I said that, he just kind of stood there, said that he was sorry, and then left. It was quite the amicable breakup that I was hoping for, but it was a breakup, and that's all that mattered. I honestly thought that it was over after that. Again, my naivety got the best of me. What I didn't expect was the barrage of calls and texts that followed. Jack would not leave me alone. It would be, "Hey, how are you?" in the morning, and then "You're such a stupid..." Well, I'm not going to finish what he said, but you can assume. This went on for a week, and then the "You don't know what you're missing out on" kind of text started, alongside pictures of his privates. This guy seriously went full-on creepy in a matter of around 8 days. It's pretty bad when I could even figure out that he wanted to be with me for literally just one thing. This went on for a couple weeks until the final night and the final event between us took place. It happened on the night of my mother's and my brother's birthday. They actually share the same birthday, so we always make it a point to have a family dinner out wherever they choose. We were out enjoying ourselves and having a great time at dinner, when out of nowhere, Jack seriously walks into the restaurant. I saw him walk in, and I saw him tell the waiter that he was with our party. He walked right over to the table and put his hands on my shoulder and squeezed, and started to say hi to my mother with the fakest voice that I've ever heard. The tension at the table was immediate, and my mom had never seen him, but it was obvious who he was. What's worse, he had the audacity to angrily ask who the hell the guy at the table was with us. And I said it was my brother, and then said that he needed to leave. My brother asked me if he needed to take care of this guy. I told him no, and honestly, it was a disaster that ended up with my brother and Jack getting into a sort of shoving match, and the manager dragging Jack out of the restaurant in a half-assed chokehold. Thankfully, they let us stay when I explained that Jack was my ex and that he had walked in to cause problems. They could see that I was being honest and told us that they would make sure that he didn't try to come back. After we ate, and after the embarrassment had worn off, we walked outside to go our separate ways. We were standing by my mother's car and talking, and almost out of nowhere, a crappy black Corolla guns it through the lot straight at us. My brother noticed it and was able to yell, and we all got out of the way. Well, my mom's car wasn't so lucky, and as you can probably assume, this Corolla belonged to Jack, and he had just committed attempted murder with his vehicle. He then backed up and tried to go as hard as he could in the direction that I ran, smacking into another car. Then he pulled away and took off. If I may say, this all sucked. My mom's car was seriously damaged, another random person's car was hit, and the back end smashed in. And all of this was because of this jackass that I decided to date for a few months. We called the cops, we talked to the management so we could find the person that owned the car that got hit. This whole thing was a disaster. I explained to the police everything that I had gone through with this guy and told them all the things that he'd sent me, and they said that they would be on a lookout for him, but at this point had to consider this as a hit and run. That night, my brother and I actually stayed at my mom's place. I was not going back somewhere where he would have access to me. and about an hour or two after we had gotten back to my mom's place, Jack actually called me. I was enraged, so I answered. I asked him what the hell was wrong with him, and probably had a few other choice words. This sick piece of shit seriously responded with, "I just want you to know that I have never been as aroused as I was when I tried to kill you." Seeing the terrified look on your face turned me on more than anything, and I can't wait to see that look on your face in class tomorrow. Then he hung up. Needless to say, I immediately called the police and informed them of what he had said. They updated the information and considered his "in class tomorrow" comment as a clear and present threat of danger, which apparently accusing someone of attempted vehicular homicide isn't. This story pretty much ends here, with Jack being arrested, expelled, and charged with several different things and thrown in prison for a few years. This was about 11 years ago. I know for a fact that he's out now, but thankfully he hasn't reached out to me or attempted to contact me in any way. I'm not going to lie, he is the one person that seriously scares the hell out of me. Mostly because he went from nice guy to attempted murderer within a couple of weeks because I wouldn't sleep with him. So Jack, the worst boyfriend that I have ever had, and the man I wish I would have never met in college, let's never meet again. And also, screw you for wrecking my mom's car like that. She seriously loved her Yaris and hasn't found one in that color blue since. And here are the top comments from my last video. And here's the riddle for this video. Hello everyone, it's your creepy sister here. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate each and every one of you. But I would also like to thank my amazing patrons, my top tippers, and my dearest channel members. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it with all of my heart. If you want to support the channel further, you could also choose to become a patron, a tipper, or a channel member. But remember, it's appreciated, but never a requirement. I would also like to announce that we have merch now. The link is in the description of the video, along with all my other social media links, like my Discord server, Twitter, Instagram, and others. You can connect with me and send your stories there. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and comments are highly appreciated. And remember, your fear feeds me.